Hello and welcome to the second episode of Profound Upon, the podcast where we have profound conversations on profound topics, sometimes with profound people. Today's episode we're going to be answering the question, what is mental wealth? I'll start off with a quick quote from Nikola Tesla. Some people might know who he is. If you don't, get Googling. If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency and vibration. I'll break down my interpretation of this and hopefully you'll start to realise that there's a lot more that you can do with this information. So simply, the law of vibration states that everything in the universe is energy in a constant state of movement, which is vibration. So the speed that something actually vibrates at is known as the frequency, and the only difference between all the tangible objects around you is the frequency that they're actually vibrating at. The human eye can't comprehend the static movement of a lot of the tangible things that you do see around you. So if you think of water, for example, water has a lot of different ways that it can be expressed. That is through gas, liquid and solid. That is all dependent on the rate of vibrational energy within the water. So I'm sure you can think how easy it is to put your hand through some gas, how easy it is to put through some water, a little bit of resistance, and then how hard it is to put your hand straight through a block of ice. Simply impossible. Anyway, this actually applies to everything, this law. And I'll start broad. Everybody thinks, when they think of the universe, they seem quite insignificant. So it can feel a little bit intimidating to look out into space and think that we are just a tiny little speck, but we are made up of the same stuff that the stars are made up of. Inside the body, we've got organ systems, cells, molecules, atoms. All of these are made up of energy, just vibrating at a particular frequency. But what if I were to tell you that it goes a little bit deeper? Everything starts with thought. Everything around you. From the microphone I'm sitting in front of right now, to the water bottle to my left, to this paper I'm holding in front of me. They all started as a thought in someone's mind. They've manifested it by creating whatever it is that once started in the mind. So a lot of people, what they don't know is separate is the thoughts. A lot of people think that they are the thoughts, when in reality, thoughts are actually created by a certain part of the brain, completely separate to the actual human body itself. And you've got to think that if everything around you is vibrating at a certain frequency, including yourself, then these thoughts that we're having must also have a frequency. And believe it or not, it's one of the only things that we actually can control is our thought process. And with repetition, these thoughts can dictate the vibration and frequency of our whole body through the dominating emotions. And I will break that down for you. So this is going to go into the Hawkins scale of consciousness. So if you're all right pulling that up from my board. Essentially, it shows that your body vibrates at a different frequency depending on the emotion that you feel in the present moment. So each human has a unique set of experiences that have kind of shaped their attitudes and the feelings and their relationships. That's based on how their senses have kind of rationalised the world around them up until now. So if you see on the left hand side, there's different paradigms. So the unique set of human experiences that kind of navigate the world around us is known as the paradigm, which is kind of the context through which we experience life. And it's why two people might interpret the same event completely differently. So if you look at the bottom part of it, you'll see that that's the survival paradigm. When you're in this context of experiencing, you're operating from the lower vibration, and that is basically what this whole chart is showing you. That the lower aspects of it are the survival paradigm, are lower vibrational stuff, and you can start to shift your mindset up to the reason and integrity paradigm, and then before you know it, you're reaching enlightenment, and there's nothing holding you back. You're working from a place with the same instruments as everyone else. You're looking at the world around you as something a lot more positive, and that's something that is definitely achievable, and it just takes a little bit of time. The paradigm actually controls the frequency of the body, and paradigms are just a reflection of the dominant emotions. Dominant emotions are just a reflection of the thoughts that we've been holding in our brain and we've been repeatedly thinking about. And this is actually a bit of neuroscience which I learned, which that emotions actually cause chemical release in your body, and the paradigm is how you actually emotionalize the things around you, so your worldview. So this scale of consciousness provides an opportunity to actually recognize like the dominant emotions you have, and it enables you to kind of reverse engineer the emotions down to like restricting beliefs and thoughts. And it also, I'd personally say that it enables you to kind of reframe and replace these through repetition of like an opposing view. So there's something called neuroplasticity, which not a lot of people are clued in on, and it kind of states that everybody in science kind of thought that the human mind stopped growing and stopped being able to grow when the body stops growing. And with neuroscience recently, with the newer brain scans, we start to learn that you can actually create new neural pathways in your brain through repeated thought at any age past 25. It's a little bit harder, but that should be reassuring in itself that you're not stuck in your ways. There is ways out. It's just going to take neuroplasticity, which is a lot of effort, but big reward in the long run. I definitely recommend looking that up if you are somebody who thinks you are stuck in your ways. So you're probably thinking then, how does this all start with thought? Because I did mention that these dominant emotions do start with thought. So this takes us to the Proctor Gallagher Institute diagram, which I'll pull up on the screen. Yep. So essentially, as you can see on the top semicircle, we'll call it, so it's split up into the human mind, and the top half is the conscious mind. This is the critical mind. It's kind of the mind that we grow as we get a little bit older and we start to be able to think more critically. And the second half is the subconscious mind, which is kind of the unfiltered stuff. I like to call it the emotional mind or the baby mind. You don't have this critical thinking in the subconscious mind. It just goes straight through and it gets impressed straight into that subconscious mind. So as power actually flows into the conscious mind through thought in the present, each thought carried with it a positive or a negative frequency. And that is usually dictated by the paradigm, by your worldview. So I'm going to explain a little bit. I'm going to throw something up on the screen actually. Continued repetition of that thought turns into a dominant emotion which controls your paradigm and your worldview. That then dictates how you actually behave and the routine that you can actually get on with in your life. So every person is actually interpreting the world unconsciously until they do become aware of the power of the mind. And this is why there's a lot of people who kind of walk around with the worldview that life's coming at them instead of from them, and that they are a victim. You've got this victim mentality, even though all along you could actually control the narrative yourself. And for a lot of people that might sting, but it can also be quite liberating. Now this actually leads me to something which I am fascinated by, but it's not something that I can talk completely about in this episode, so we'll spread it out along the other episodes. So the law of attraction is essentially the way that we create the relationships, situations, objects in our life as a direct result of the way we've been thinking. So we we manifest the things around us by focusing on them, visualizing them, and then directing our energy towards them through actions. That's the key point. Through actions. What are the last 6 letters of the law of attraction? Action. You're not just going to get things magically coming towards you, like a lot of people think with manifestation. So this law is a direct and purposeful connection between intention and action. Intention is the key word that sets this aside from anything else. Intention is when intuition, emotions, and critical thinking, rational thinking work in harmony. So if you can figure out how to align your intuition, your emotions, and your rational thinking, which is usually done through like definiteness of purpose and like a definite plan. So you need to kind of figure out a way for these to work in harmony, so you can then act on the things that you want to get out of life. And I'd say that acting from a place of lack or abundance is key when it comes to law of attraction. And this refers back to what we're talking about with the scale of consciousness, which I talked about before. So acting from a place of abundance would be these higher vibrations, and acting from a place of lack would be the lower vibrations. So acting from a place of lack or a place of abundance is going to be responsible for the outcome. And I'll talk about negative thinking first as an example. So repeated negative thinking actually creates pathways in your brain, which is strange. Creates pathways in your brain that kind of act as defense mechanisms. So, for example, if you had a shitload of work that you needed to do when you got home in your spare time, and you repeatedly negatively thought about it before doing it, you're actually creating pathways in your brain for your body to release the stress hormone cortisol when it comes to actually acting and making a decision to work on it, which I think is absolutely crazy that your brain can actually do that. But with this actually affects persistence. So obviously, as you can imagine, if you're wanting to not give up on something, but you're repeatedly thinking negatively about it and reaffirming these pathways in your brain, when it comes to it, you will not be able to act to the same extent as if you was eliminating all this negativity. So when we do think negatively about a process, we also kind of flood our brain with more negative thoughts, and we're attracting more negative thoughts into our brain. I don't know if you ever, this is more personal experience, but if you've laid in bed and you've thought about something negative, before you know it, an hour's pass you by, you're not even thinking about the same thing, but you're thinking about something maybe even worse. And this is because when you're on that lower vibration, you're thinking about these lower vibration things, you're actually on the same wavelength as these other negative thoughts, and you're actually welcoming them, which can be quite surprising to a lot of people. And I don't want to talk too much. I don't want to be too long-winded with the law of attraction stuff, but with regard to relationships, our state of vibration actually affects who we attract into our life. So, for example, happy attracts happy. I'm sure you've seen someone walk into a room and they've just lifted the spirits completely. And this, believe it or not, they're going to attract other people that are also in that vibration, which usually tends to be it tends to be people that they want to meet. And you see it happen with trauma bonding as well, with people who are in a negative space. People can be drawn to each other just based off the negativity that they've been feeling at the time, which can be quite damaging at some points. But I've met plenty of people through trauma, and we've built positive relationships through it, so it's not always bad. And this brings me to resonance. So the way that we kind of resonate with people, and resonate is a word that kind of gets thrown around socially. So maybe someone's resonating with you through a song, might be through a movie, or it might just be face to face and the words that they're saying to you. But resonance, when it comes to the law of vibration, is actually a word for vibration, where two vibrations actually meet each other and then start to resonate and they meet. So when we actually visualize what we want in our life, our brain recognizes patterns that kind of resonate with what we want. And if we have a clear mind, we will attract thoughts that aid in growing this vision. The same way that we'll attract people into our lives that also have similar visions. So the key point here, I'd say, is a clear mind and clarity. If your mind is blocked by this self-imposed adversity, then you're not going to have clarity. You're not going to have space for, say, I'll use this podcast as an example. I'll keep my mind clear, so I'm then open to ideas that are going to flood into my brain to then improve this, and I can then work on growing this idea into whatever it's going to be in 5 years' time. Sounds like someone's getting shot outside. Anyway, so the last point I'd like to make when it comes to the law of attraction is on patience. So patience is actually a key attribute when it comes to the law of attraction, because it aids in actually maintaining this positive mentality that you build up. And I don't know if you've seen videos on social media or posts on social media of people who are like, it's obviously a metaphor, but they're mining and they get right to the end, but they give up and they end up turning around. So you could use this as an example when it comes to the law of attraction and holding in your mind what you actually want in life and not giving up just before you could have reached the final hurdle. So when you actually get to that point where you're starting to let doubt seep in, you're actually infecting your mind and welcoming, like I said before, welcoming more thoughts that are on that same wavelength, and that enables you to not push yourself anymore at all. So if you can do your best to hold on to this thought in your mind and push yourself without even letting doubt creep its head in, then you will get anything you want out of life. You've just got to be persistent with it. The next point I'd like to make is, it will change the subject now completely, but it kind of correlates. The topic that I'm going to be touching on is time. Now, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on time. Time is something which obviously everybody has, but nobody really, I don't think many people really understand how much time we actually have and what time actually is. So people might think of time as like a one-way motion from the past through the present and into the future. But this carries the impression with it that what happens now is a direct result of what has happened, and kind of implies that we're being driven along by our past. Now, people connect it to causality, and I don't know if you know what causality is, but I'll explain it. It's cause and effect. Basically, when I pick this water bottle up and drop it, it's going to hit the floor. The cause is me dropping it, the effect is it hitting the floor. People kind of attribute time to causality in the way that they say that now, the present moment, is moving under the power of the past. I call bullshit on that. I think it's the completely other way around. It's actually that the past is a direct result of the present. And I will go into that a little bit more because it's fascinating and very liberating. We'll start with the Big Bang. Think about the Big Bang, the start of everything, essentially. The universe actually began in a now moment. So when you're thinking about a now moment, think about you're listening to this podcast right now. You're looking into this video right now. We've kind of, as people, divided time into events for historical recollection. So, for example, the First World War started in 1914 and it ended in 1918. Who are we to actually say that that's when the war started and ended? I'm sure there were a series of events that led up to the war, so before 1914. I'm sure there were a series of events afterwards which were also related to the war. So we've just kind of given that a date to be able to recall it and think back on it. And we also do this personally. So we do it with trauma. So I'm sure that plenty of people and anybody watching this podcast could have had a traumatic experience in their life. But the difference in one person to another is recognizing that that trauma is not you. It's a separate event that happened. And essentially it's like the analogy where you're holding on to, if I'm holding on to this bottle, I might ask someone to hold on to it for 5 minutes, they'll be fine. But the longer that they actually hold on to it, the more that this is actually causing pain. My arm might start to ache a little bit, and my body might start to ache, and then it's going to start to have an effect. I might start lashing out at people. Obviously, this is a metaphor. I'm sure you can get your head around it. But we divide our time into events to kind of seem sane. We want to be able to recall things and then be able to talk in conversation. It's completely rational. But we tend to forget that we've done it. And we end up being kind of puppets of the past, which is not true at all. You just need a little bit of a reframe and you realise that there's a lot you can do now. I'd say you need to begin by approaching the world through your ears. And I will explain that. So if you were to close your eyes, you don't have to close your eyes, but anybody watching, you close your eyes, and you realise that my voice, the sounds that you hear coming out of silence, has a vibration into your ear. So sounds different to sight because it kind of echoes away into the corridors of our mind that we call memory. And you don't get the same effect with sight as everything is in static vibration, as I explained earlier. So your eyes can't comprehend how fast that's vibrating, but it's actually coming out of nothing. So time, just like the vibrations of sound that are coming through your ear, is coming out of nothing. So looking at it from the lens of causality is only detrimental to you, and it literally benefits nobody. The time for you to work, the time for you to graft is now. Don't worry about if you didn't crack on 10 months ago when you were supposed to. Now is the time. There is no time like the present, as they do say. If you think of time like a ship, think of time like a boat floating through the ocean. A boat leaves a wake. I don't know if you know what a wake is, but It's the ripples, it's the waves. The waves show where the ship's been. But do the waves direct the boat, or is it the captain of the ship? Yeah, the waves don't direct the ship. The same way the tail doesn't wag the dog. It all starts now. All of it. Same with the future. You might be waiting for something really cool that's going to happen. But guess what? It's going to happen in the present moment. It's just going to happen a little bit later down the line. So this should be a complete liberation to some people who have had a disruptive past or a past that they're not too proud of. Now is the moment where they can decide to change that and stop being held down by it. Stop defining yourself by what you've done before. Start defining yourself by what you're about to do and what you are doing now. Like, time, it might seem like we've got a whole lot of it, but there's only a certain window what you've got to be able to do the things that you want to do in life. And the present moment is the best time for that. And that's all I really want to talk about on time. So, then in episode 1, I did mention that I was going to be talking about the 13 principles of success from Napoleon Hill. So, I'll paraphrase, but Napoleon Hill was given the task to speak to all the richest people in America, and he developed these 13 principles based off everything that he learned from all of these pioneers of the industries that they're in. So, the first and the only one that I'm going to be talking about today is desire. Desire is the first principle of success. And this is actually the starting point of all achievement. He mentions that it's a burning desire to achieve. So you've got to be completely convinced that what you want to get out of life is actually what you want. There's no time for hope or wishing. These are just not strong enough. It needs to be emotionalized desire. You need to be convinced of this. And this comes with a definiteness of purpose. Definiteness of purpose is not something that a lot of people have, but it comes with figuring out what you want to get out of life and then getting really specific with the knowledge of what you actually want to get. So if you can visualize exactly what you want, that desire becomes a lot more emotional and it becomes more than just a wish. You've also got to want that more than anything else. You've got to be willing to burn all the bridges, all the comfort blankets that you've kept for yourself in order to maintain this state of mind. And it also allows the mind to be fully saturated with desire. If you've got these psychological bridges in your brain where just like causing you comfort and ways around like or backup plans in a way, it's like you're telling your brain you don't have full faith that this is going to happen. I have decided that podcasting is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to stop until I've got one of the most successful podcasts. This is my burning desire. It's time for the people to start figuring out what theirs is. It's no good being vague. It's no good starting broad. I'm sure that you know what you want to get out of life, and there's plenty of ways that you can get it. You've just got to take that first step. Like, nobody is ready until they believe that they can actually acquire it, and that's where the belief comes. That's where the getting ready comes. It's like once you are completely ready to acquire it, and once you believe that you can acquire it, this state of mind takes you to a completely new level, because all you have to do essentially is like I mentioned in the first episode. It's like instead of swimming upstream into the current, you're just floating down with the current, and you're acting in spite of all the adversity, just because you know that the adversity itself is not going to stop you if you are holding on to this burning desire for long enough. So the state of mind must be belief. You need to believe that you're going to get it, and this comes with clarity, like I mentioned before when we're talking about time, and like I mentioned when we're talking with vibration. You've got to actively work to clear your mind and keep your mind open. That is a big part of it, and that even works with the law of attraction. Once you keep this mind completely open, you'll realise there's plenty of avenues that you can take to get what you want. You don't have to be a specific way, but you can push yourself. It takes as much effort to aim high as it does to accept the fact that you're miserable and that you're going to be in poverty for the rest of your life. If you can just accept, if you have as much faith in the fact that you're going to make it as you do in the fact that you're going to be poor for the rest of your life, You're simply just swapping out one thought with another thought. Once you desire it, all you require is a plan. That's all you require. That'll come. Just hold it in your mind with this burning passion and the willingness to take action. You need to be willing to actually take action on what you're doing. And I'll tell you some examples of what they gave, of what Earl Nightingale actually gave when I read the book. So people with a burning desire, which you could actually use as an example, and actually a big part of civilization as it is now, even though they were alive maybe 100 years ago. The first one's the Wright brothers. I don't know if you've heard of the Wright brothers, but they wanted to invent the plane. And I don't know how much you've heard about the backlash that they received from that, but everyone just thought they were stupid. They were told it were impossible. No one had ever done that before. Anything heavier than gravity is falling straight to the centre of the earth. Until they figured it out, they held this burning desire in their mind and they achieved it. The same with Thomas Edison. He wanted to invent a lamp powered by electricity. Again, he was laughed at. He was laughed out in most places. He actually had 10,000 failed attempts before he achieved it. 10,000. That is a lot of attempts. Guess what? He invented it. Now there's examples everywhere, the same with the plane and the Wright brothers. And then the final example is Henry Ford. Henry Ford wanted to make a horseless carriage. He pushed way past that horseless carriage. This guy was poor, uneducated. Did it stop him? No, he was holding this in his brain, this burning desire the whole time. And all he had to do was act. Act in spite of worry, act in spite of doubt, act in spite of all adversity. All achievement, no matter the scale, began with a burning desire. And that burning desire was backed by faith. Faith is what we're going to talk about on next week's episode, or the next solo episode, sorry. So I'm not going to talk too much more about these principles of success. But I am going to bring this episode together. I had said at the beginning of the episode that we're going to be answering the question, what is mental wealth? So I hope that you can kind of, before I go into it, figure out what mental wealth might be based off what I've told you. But I'd say it starts with accepting that all your power is in the present moment. Tomorrow doesn't really exist. Tomorrow is just going to be another version of the present moment. Gives you another opportunity to push it forward. Get that shit done now. There's no time like the present. I also say that it's knowing that you have the tools to achieve what you want. Like, you've got the tools to achieve anything you desire, and that all starts with the thought. That thought will then materialise. It'll eventually become habits. All you have to do is start thinking positively. It sounds really, really easy. And it is. That's why people don't do it. It sounds too easy. I also think it comes with understanding that if you think that you can, you're right. If you think that you can, you're also right. It's all about what you think of yourself. Stop telling yourself that you're not worth it, that you can't get there. Because you fucking can. There's nothing different. You've got the same instruments as the same people that I just read off this list. And you can get whatever you want. Not enough people know this. The ceiling is fucking high. I'd also say that my final point on what mental wealth is accepting that if you are unhappy, you can actively change your life. But the power is in your hands. Stop looking at other people for happiness. Stop looking for the next relationship, for the next best friend, for the next best drug, for the next so on and so forth. The power is in your hands right now. And there's plenty of things, there's plenty of ways that you could use this power to your advantage. And if you do use it unconsciously, it'll be to your detriment. So I'm gonna go on to the next segment, and this is a segment that it's gonna be brought back every time I do a solo episode, but I'm gonna be answering a couple of questions from the viewers at home. If you have any questions that you'd like to send in, go send an email to profoundapon@outlook.com. We will get these questions written down, and I will do my best to answer them off the top of my head. So this segment is called Q4A, question for answer. Really fucking original. But Bog, please ask these questions away.
first thing we've got.
Yep.
How do I stop caring about what other people think of me?
So, this is a problem which I definitely had to deal with over my younger years. I could not stop caring about other people's opinions, and I think this comes down to criticism in a way, and maybe a lot of people have different experiences with criticism. I experienced it a lot in my younger years, but if you have a completely sound self-image and you know exactly what you want to get out of life, criticism will have absolutely no effect on you. I feel like that's what the question is more aimed towards, just because if you cared about people being happy for you, then there's something a little bit wrong with you, I'd say. But essentially, I would say that if you can figure out who you are, what you want to do, and then actively work towards achieving it, then you are completely aligned with your purpose, and other people's opinions will not matter at all. I remember seeing Tom Holland on a podcast say, if you've got a problem with what I'm doing, call me up and tell me about it. If you don't have my phone number, you don't know me well enough to have a problem with what I'm saying or what I'm doing. So take that into consideration when you think about what criticism is. Back again, sorry for the cut. The camera did overheat, but this time it overheated after about 50 minutes, so that's progress from episode 1. We are getting there. Anyway, we've got one more question left, because we don't want to run the risk of it overheating again. So, Bob, fire away.
So, follow on quite nicely. How do I become more disciplined?
Yeah. Discipline. Discipline is a difficult point, because it is irrelevant if you cannot achieve clarity. And I know I might sound like I'm talking about clarity a lot in this episode, but if you cannot have an empty mind, there's no point you even starting to try and be disciplined. I think that's the starting point of discipline. That's what I personally say. And then repetition of action. So if you can keep your mind clear, as I've mentioned numerous times, of this self-imposed adversity that you're putting inside your brain, then you will then be able to act in spite of it. And once you've done it enough times, it starts to become habit. Like these habitual actions, they don't come easy, and they don't come to just any Tom, Dick and Harry. You've got to actually work for it. You've got to actually put in the effort. You've got to do it every day. It's that easy. It might sound difficult, but once you've done it enough, you will be a bit more disciplined person. You've also got to remember that no one's 100% disciplined. You've got to carefully attain it over time, and that will be more possible as you kind of start to tick off these things that you didn't think you could get done before, but now you can get done. And I think that kind of takes me on to the outro. I think I've talked enough today. If you have got anything you'd like to add or any questions, as I mentioned, you can send in your questions to profoundupon@outlook.com. If there's anything that you'd like us to talk about, you're welcome to go to the social medias, give us a comment, give us a message, or even comment down on the bottom of this YouTube video. I am all ears. I want to build a community of people that can work together and that can work in unison to achieve what they want to get out of life. So I will say that if you do care about your mental health, go and stream Mental Wealth on Spotify and Apple Music. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.
I advocate to find something that captivates, then activate. Don't let small things aggravate, psychologically graduate. If they're there just to congratulate, that limb you must amputate. If they're selfish, emancipate, cause you just don't have time for it. This is my advice, no cadet. To overcome you must accept, not forget. Then the benefits will outweigh the threats. Choose the pain of discipline or have the pain of regret.